You're listening to Overdoing It, the Rhode Island Library Podcast. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Overdoing It, where our team of library workers dish about their latest reads, views, and passions alongside fascinating conversations with local luminaries. I'm your host, Dave Bartos, Coordinator of Adult Services at Cranston Public Library, and my pronouns are he, him. Let's dive in and discover who our guest is today.
Hi, I'm Liza Birch with the Providence Streets Coalition. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. A little bit later in the show, we'll talk with Liza about Providence Streets Coalition, their work advocating for Providence and the streets therein, and a little bit about Save RIPTA campaign going on right now. But before we get to that, let's start out, as we always do, with what have you been reading?
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Well, I'll just start by saying that I'm obsessed with books, and if if I didn't work in public transit advocacy, I would be working in public library advocacy.
Right on.
And the Providence Community Libraries have been an amazing partner of the Streets Coalition since day one, literally day one of our founding. And the two are just completely intertwined for me. Both are just public goods that connect communities and increase our access to education and opportunity. So I love libraries. I love books. I'm a total nerd. Right now I'm reading a book called The Children of God, which is the sequel to The Sparrow.
Okay, yeah.
By Mary Doria Russell. And it's a sci-fi book about Jesuit priests in space who go to the planet of Rakat on a mission trip to make contact with the two sentient species there. And it's kind of like, what if it's asking this question? What if we made contact with another planet, and just like in colonial times on this planet, the Catholic Church was the first to make contact. And what would that look like?
Yeah.
And it really delves into their spiritual crises that emerge from that, and really is trying to not repeat the mistakes of the past here, but then kind of inevitably doing that, because making first contact with another species or another culture is being voluntarily in a state of radical ignorance. So and even if you mean well, you can often cause just utter disaster to happen when you take two cultures and collide them like that with knowing nothing about each other.
Absolutely. I
love it so much. It's great.
I read, I think 2 years ago now, I read The Sparrow for the first time. And that was, it was just as you say. I mean, the framing of the story where it was told in flashbacks, and then the one person who made it back to Earth, and kind of his PTSD essentially over the situation, and kind of getting that little piece by piece of what actually happened. And for the main character, his spiritual journey, he was actually sort of spiritually broken by the time he made it back. I mean, it was a hard read, but really visionary and beautiful at the same time. And then, I got to the end, and it was we need you to go back for one more mission. And so that must be the one that you just read. Yeah. I haven't started it yet.
Yeah. I actually, I read The Sparrow again. I think I had read it 2 or 3 years ago. And I was like, that was, I wolfed it down the first time. And I was like, I binge books like that. And I was like, I want to actually reread this. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to read it this time. It explores survivor's guilt, PTSD, many different cultures, not only, and spiritualities, not only Catholicism. I'm personally Jewish, so something that I learned because is that the author is a Jewish convert. Yeah, and she wrote this sort of as a reaction to her conversion to Judaism, which I thought was totally fascinating.
Right, where the mind takes you, it's incredible. And I mean, I was reading it as an atheist, and kind of a similar thing. It's I think, speaking from my own personal spirituality, anything that helps a person kind of frame and understand the world around them, I think is a beautiful thing. And as long as it is treating all people with compassion and equality and equity, I think it's wonderful, and full respect the way anybody kind of approaches the world. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
So yeah, I love sci-fi and
Yes.
fantasy, and my work is really like technocratic and bureaucratic. So I often just like want a good story at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, and something I think that the thing about sci-fi is specifically is sci-fi it might be based in the future, but it's always about right now. And so I imagine that, that right nowness informs your work in ways. A sci-fi that I loved that I tell everyone to read is The Terraformers by Annalee Newitz. It's kind of like set tens of thousands of years in the future. There are genetically grown beings who are tasked with terraforming a planet for basically rich humans to go have a vacation on. So it's like a vacation planet, right?
Got it.
But the problem, quote unquote, is that they create beings who also have autonomy and are like their own beings, and then sort of what happens after that. And it's just so it's so people kind of like with the Sparrow and Children of God, like the people in it are so fully realized that you just believe whatever is happening. You're just like, oh, I believe this because like these characters are so fully formed. And it's beautiful when that happens. Well, have you been watching anything interesting lately?
I mean, the best thing is that I've seen recently is Heated Rivalry.
Yes. Okay.
By far.
Yeah. It's taken the world by storm. I love it.
It took my heart by storm. I couldn't believe what I was seeing before my eyes. Like how the, first the difference between the first couple of episodes,
yes,
which are steamy, and then how it evolves into like two separate stories about true love and how incredibly wholesome it became.
yes. I've watched the first 3 episodes so far. I'm going slow because I fall asleep, and so that's primarily for me. But like, the first 2 episodes, I was like, wow. Okay, I'm going to continue watching. This is great. And then the 3rd episode, I'm just like bawling. It's like, oh my God, this is gorgeous. Yeah. And then I'm just looking forward to it. Yeah. It'd be like, oh, we tricked you into watching a romance novel, essentially, which is amazing.
Yeah, that is what I needed. I didn't know that I needed it, but that is what I needed. And I love that it's like funded by the Canadian government. And
right. Right.
It's just so.
What we all need is the gay Canadian hockey show. And it's going to heal the world.
Getting me through seasonal depression, that's for sure.
Oh, yes. Wonderful. All right. Well, I want to make sure we have enough time to talk about you and your advocacy with the Providence Streets Coalition. So why don't you, if you could give our audience just sort of the 101 on the founding of the group and what you're doing.
Absolutely. So the Providence Streets Coalition was founded in 2019, in late 2019, kind of as a reaction to 4 different government plans that are all about improving transportation and mobility, both in Providence and statewide. And there were 2 plans by the city of Providence, the Great Streets Plan and the Climate Justice Plan, and 2 plans by the state of Rhode Island, the Bike Mobility Plan and the Transit Master Plan. And I'm a transportation planner by trade. And transportation planners put together like these documents that are like hundreds of pages long that contain really visionary ideas for projects and for policies, things that can really change the way that our culture moves around, moving from this like car dependent society to one that we have more options for getting around. And so the car is not the only option. And it's really important. Like, I think some folks believe that we all just hate cars and hate drivers. And that is just not the case. I personally own a car and I drive it. What we hate and what we are fighting against is the systems of car dependency that lock us in to driving for every trip, that make, public transit and walking and biking in this tiny, dense state where our destinations are so close together and should be accessible with a variety of different options, just not viable right now for most people. For most people. And then it's supporting the people who cannot afford a car, who cannot drive due to disabilities or immigration status, who cannot drive because they're too young, because they're kids and babies, and folks who choose not to drive because of environmental reasons. And in the city of Providence, altogether, we estimate that's about 20% of the population
It's
about 10% statewide.
Okay.
Which is a non-significant, when you put all of the kind of non-drivers together, it's a good amount of people, and they don't necessarily have had a very strong voice in our politics, as evidenced by kind of the current state of things, where really cars are the only choice, and the car is the most expensive choice. That's the thing.
Yes.
The car is by far the most expensive choice, and it's similar to housing, where we don't have a lot of different housing options except for single family homes. And so we're like forcing people to choose the most expensive option.
Right.
So we're all about choices, all about options, and trying to increase funding and political will and public excitement for better RIPTA system, also a better train system through the MBTA and Amtrak, and also our walking and biking, especially. And so we really started in 2019, very focused on walking and biking in the city of Providence. And we've since kind of grown beyond that because of the post-COVID transit funding crisis, which has taken the entire nation, where public transit systems across the U.S. have been really struggling financially. And certainly RIPTA, because of generations of underfunding combined with lower ridership after COVID because of remote work and changing work patterns, as well as inflation, where just everything is costing more money. And especially our amazing drivers need and deserve more money so that they can continue to earn a family-sustaining wage as they had in the past. And now with more driving, like UPS and Amazon and Uber and Lyft, more driving jobs on the market, are the wages for our bus drivers was falling far behind. For all those reasons, RIPTA's operating budget needs to increase. And that's what we work on now at the State House primarily.
Yeah. I always think it's really interesting working in public libraries. I feel like we don't get seen in the same way as services like public transit. Like, I always talk about the United States Postal Service, and people are like, oh, the United States Postal Service is losing money. And it's like, no, it's a service that costs money. Like RIPTA is not losing money. It is a service that costs money. If people stopped and looked at public libraries, like I buy tens of thousands of dollars of books a year, and they don't make money. But it's just kind of like how to shift the framing from this is a business that's losing money to a service that costs money for the people, I think is, something that always crosses my mind. Right.
Totally. I'm so glad you made that connection and brought that up. So public transit exists in this like really weird space where people aren't sure if it's a public good or if it's a business that's supposed to make money. And, in the beginning of this country, and Rhode Island's history is so intertwined with, the Gilded Age, and so much of the wealth that was generated during that time was because of private railroad monopolies and private streetcar companies, and all of the public transit before the cars, was privately owned, and employing, and the reason that they were able to make so much money was one of the reasons was because they were monopolies, and there were very few, regulations on them, and then they were also employing like slave labor, basically. And so many Chinese immigrants building the railroads, and like there were no labor laws back then, and so they were able to generate wild amounts of capital by connecting cities and by providing passenger transportation. And people really hated it; like they really hated those companies. And if you just look at a map of Rhode Island from like the turn of the century, we had one of the most robust public transit systems you can imagine. There are lines connecting every village, and that's, now we have bike paths on top of some of those, or they're overgrown, or they're, have just been converted into streets, into regular paved streets. So we've lost all of that. But basically what happened is like, as soon as you instituted fair labor laws and some like very common sense, like safety regulation and antitrust laws, very quickly, all the profitability of transportation goes away.
Right.
And as it turns out, moving people fairly safely is not profitable and never has been. And so it's been turned over to the government and has never made money. And we in this country, for like the past 70, 80 years since the passing of the Interstate Highway Act in 1956, have been doing socialism for roads and bridges. We pay insane amounts of money for our roads and bridges. Small amounts of money do get generated through tolls over the bridges and such, but we basically don't pay to use the roads.
Right.
People think that they are paying a fee through their vehicle registration and gas taxes, but that's a much smaller fraction. Like the driver user fee to fund the roads is a much smaller fraction of the cost than folks would think. And a large part of that comes from just our general income, sales taxes that everyone pays. And so we've gotten such a highly developed road system and such a feeble public transit system.
Right.
And then we have this expectation that public transit should pay for itself through fares. And it's just not the case. RIPTA generates only about 20% of its budget from fares. And it's mostly from different funding sources and different funding sources. And that's what the Save RIPTA legislation is all about, is about increasing those funding sources and finding new funding sources so that we can increase service, so that we can make RIPTA a more viable choice for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting that you point that out. And I would, if you have a percentage on like the state highway funding that comes from registrations and gas tax and those and the like, I would imagine that's smaller than 20%. And so like, even though RIPTA is only getting 20% of its funding from fares, that was probably more than the state highways are getting from direct use in those ways. And I think that's the answer to, somebody who's like, well, I'm driving my car. Like, why should I fund the public transit that I'm not using? And I think the simple answer is because the people who are using the public transit are funding the rebuilding of the Washington Bridge. That's something that is, very big and annoying for drivers right now.
Yes.
And it should be fixed. I'm not saying don't fix the Washington Bridge. I'm just saying, the people deserve to have all the things fixed.
Yeah. Really wish that we were putting a bus lane on the new Washington Bridge.
Right.
Part of like making RIPTA a more viable choice for people is getting the bus out of traffic, and dedicated bus lanes is a huge part of that. Giving the, why take RIPTA if you're just going to be stuck in traffic? You don't have to drive and you don't have to pay for gas, and you can be on your phone, you can work, you can read, which are huge upsides. But we really need to make public transit more competitive with driving. But back to your question, like, why would somebody who doesn't use transit support it? And the really simple answer to that is just every single person on the bus is not someone causing more traffic and not someone competing with you for a parking space. A RIPTA bus can hold up to 40 people. That's 40 cars we could have off the road. So it's just about efficiency. Traffic congestion is like very basic math, very basic geometry and math, and we can't build our way out of it. That's been proven over and over and over again, that you cannot build your way out of traffic congestion. Just adding a lane invites more cars, invites more congestion. So it's about getting folks out of cars into different alternatives to ensure those that actually really have to drive, of which there are many, many thousands, a significant portion of the if you're a contractor, if you're, an at-home nurse, somebody who has to be driving around the state for their job, for whom public transit is never going to work and biking and walking is never going to work.
Right.
Then you should be fighting for alternatives as well, because it's going to directly benefit you. We're trying to get folks out of cars who are going 1 mile to the grocery store.
Right. Right. Well, that's 2 stops away, and think about it that way. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Who are going 1 mile to the grocery store, who are going downtown for an evening out. There's a huge intoxicated driving aspect to having alternatives. Going to the park, going to the dog park. There's all these different use cases for transportation alternatives that are really about short trips and making sure that we can move around our communities without having to get in our cars.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And so, give it for again listeners who aren't aware, or folks that are listening from outside of Rhode Island. Can you talk a little bit about we're saving RIPTA, and so like if you could talk a bit about the reductions and the budget cuts that I know just happened last year, and then pivot from that to like it's a new legislative year here in Rhode Island, and what you have in store for Save RIPTA coming up.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'll just start. Anyone who is listening who is interested to get involved or learn more, a website with all of the information I'm about to outline is pvdstreets.org/save-RIPTA. And all of the info is there. But yes, great question. So for the past 2 legislative sessions, RIPTA has come in with a huge budget deficit. And we were able to plug that gap in 2024 with some one-time funding. In last year, we won $15 million in new annual funding, but it was not enough to close the gap. And despite a lot of really strong advocacy, including confronting Governor McKee at the Rochambeau Public Library.
Yes, I was there. That was great.
Yes, which we are still very grateful to our coalition partners. That was probably a stressful situation for everyone, but we really wanted to draw the connection between public transit and public libraries, and it did result in us being able to sit down with the governor in the library basement that morning.
Wow.
And to talk, but it unfortunately didn't move him to make any changes. And it did result in really devastating service cuts across the system last fall, which we are still dealing with the fallout of. And if you're curious about that, we have an 8-minute documentary film about the bus cuts up on our website right now that follows some young people and some drivers around the state as they navigate the new system with all the buses running less frequently, and some lines being cut. And we also have a service cuts impact report, which we released at the State House last month at the opening of this year's session. What is good about this session is that the governor has chosen to plug the gap. So he's proposed a few different funding mechanisms to make sure that RIPTA does not have a budget gap this year, but it does not restore the cuts from last year. And it does not set RIPTA on a path towards growth that we want to see. So yes, we founded this coalition and this campaign as Save RIPTA. We would really like to be getting beyond saving and into expanding RIPTA to better serve all of Rhode Island. And that's still not the case. So they cut RIPTA service by about 15% statewide. It's more like 22% on Sundays, 20% on Saturdays, and 15, I think, on the weekdays. It affects 2/3 of the lines, of about 45 lines out of 63. All of them are slower. All of them are slower. All of them are coming less frequently. And if there's one thing your listeners take away from this conversation, I want it to be the word frequency. Frequency is the key to a healthy transportation system. Because if you go to the bus stop and the bus is not coming for 40 minutes, that is not a viable choice. And so what these cuts did is they took, like I said, 2/3 of the lines and made them less frequent. So 20-minute lines went to 30 minutes, 30-minute lines went to 45 minutes, an hour lines went to every 2 hours. And the reliability of the system is all thrown into chaos as well. So now it's really difficult to know like when the bus is even coming. And then if you miss it, you're waiting for a really long time. And in the winter, it's just awful. It's just awful to be stuck outside in the cold waiting for the bus. It's undignified and it's unacceptable. So our advocacy is all about frequency. Rhode Island, like we're fairly okay at building new stuff. Like we just opened the Pawtucket Central Falls bus station and a new bus hub at CCRI. And they are making some good like capital improvements. But the frequency is the heart of the issue. And it doesn't matter like really what the passenger facilities are like if the bus is just not going to come on time, and if the bus is going to be so far in between that if you miss it, your whole day is ruined.
Yeah.
You're late to work. You might get fired for being late to work.
Mm-hmm.
You're late to class. You're missing school. You're missing doctor's appointments.
Right.
The ways that that this frequency reduction has really taken a toll on people's lives is the main message that we are trying to get out to the legislators and say that we need to reverse this. We need to be moving towards, you should walk to the bus stop and know that the next one is coming within 20 minutes.
Right.
Like you shouldn't need to consult a schedule. That's how public transit is supposed to function.
Yes.
You shouldn't have to look at an app or like at anything. It's just like, I'm going to walk to the bus stop and the next one will be here.
And the next one will come. Yeah.
The next one will come. That's it.
Yeah.
And that is the way that we will turn this whole thing around. That's the way that we reduce car dependency. That's the way that we convert more car drivers to bus riders is with frequency.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I work in Garden City in Cranston, and the 21 and the 22 are right near us. And multiple people will come in and say, when's the next bus? And it's like, oh, it's in like 50 minutes, and then they're just kind of like, well, I guess I'm just hanging around a library, which isn't the worst place to be, but also, you feel that frustration off of them. That's like, well, what now? And the snow, we've got a lot of snow on the ground right now. And so I've got people that are like, well, I'm not going to the 21 because there's nowhere to stand because it's covered with snow. Right.
Totally.
And again, it's kind of just, there's that frustration. And then you'll have people who say, well, I can't wait this hour. I guess I'll just take a car. Like the folks who can will just become drivers. Right. And, not having that choice comes down to.
Exactly. And people are resorting to having to pay a lot of money to Uber and Lyft.
Yes. Yeah.
And so one of our bills, I'll transition to this. One of our bills is, so right now, every Uber and Lyft ride is already taxed at 7%, like our normal 7% sales tax. But that 7% sales tax from Uber and Lyft rides, which we believe is somewhere between $10 and $15 million a year, goes to Rhode Island's general fund. And we think that it should go to RIPTA. It makes so much sense. Almost nothing has been more destructive to public transit than Uber and Lyft, which are essentially taxi companies that are buoyed by venture capital. They are cheaper than a regular taxi because they're being artificially inflated with venture capital dollars. So we were not like experiencing the real cost. And so that's how they've been able to be cheaper than taxis. And obviously the technology of the app itself is a lot more convenient than an analog taxi. They also don't have fair labor practices. They don't have fair safety practices, as I just saw in the New York Times, that there's the very first sexual assault case against an Uber driver is moving forward and opening doors to many, many, many other cases that are waiting in the wings. So I expect to see some interesting fallout from that. Anyway, the point is that we should be redirecting the existing sales tax that Uber and Lyft riders pay to RIPTA to bolster specifically the paratransit programs.
Okay.
So RIPTA, it's important for folks to know that RIPTA runs kind of two separate transit programs. One is called fixed route. Those are the big 40-foot long buses that you see that are running along a fixed route with a fixed schedule every single day. Then there's paratransit, which is for folks with disabilities who, for multiple reasons, because disability is not a monolith and there's so many different conditions that people deal with that impact their mobility, they are able to call a smaller vehicle. It's like an oversized van, essentially, that takes you door to door. And traditionally, the paratransit, which is expensive, going door to door is essentially a taxi, right? Yep. That is very expensive compared to the fixed route service. Most Uber and Lyfts and most taxis in the state are not wheelchair accessible, are not ADA accessible. And so paratransit for folks who cannot use fixed route and cannot use Uber and Lyft is often their only choice. And it is so important that this be a better system. And the system itself is often just terrible. Just terrible to use. The user experience, the customer service experience is just really bad. And that's what we hope to change by injecting more funding into the system. So what happened last year is that and also the paratransit system has always been legally linked to the Civil Rights Act, which says that you have to provide equal services for people of all abilities. And so the paratransit has always legally only been available to people who live within 3/4 of a mile of RIPTA's fixed route system.
Huh.
So it's saying like, if you live, if you're like along the fixed route system and you can't use the system because of a disability, we're providing this alternative, this equal alternative. If you live beyond that, tough luck.
Really? Wow. Huh.
So up until about a year ago, that was the case.
Yeah.
But they just, due to the powerful advocacy of the disability community, of which we are so honored and blessed to be working in coalition with, they fought and won for the paratransit, for RIPTA's paratransit program to be expanded statewide, which is great. So now folks out in Burrillville, out in Little Compton, who can't drive due to disabilities, who never had access to RIPTA before, now do have access to the paratransit programs. But guess what? It's very expensive.
It's still expensive. It's still very expensive. Yeah.
Very expensive. Not to say we shouldn't do it. We should absolutely be doing it. We just need to fund it. We just need it to be funded. And so that's why this year our bill for the Uber and Lyft tax redirection would go specifically towards RIPTA's paratransit programs, not towards its fixed route. Yeah.
How does that that amount of money, how does that like impact the budget? Like what it would if you know the budget for the paratransit specifically?
I think, it would help a lot.
It would help a lot. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
It would help a lot. And there's, I think it would allow for probably more vehicles, more drivers, better customer service, better technology, making the whole system easier and better to use, and really cementing its statewide availability.
Yeah. I've got coworkers who use Ride to get to work, and and they have horror stories to tell, unfortunately. And a lot of that is just from not investing in the system to make it, something to be proud of, I guess was how I would look at that.
Exactly. It's like, oh, it's summer and the AC is broken in one vehicle. Too bad. Like not fixing it.
Or this driver left me, took me out in my wheelchair and left me in a place that is not the place that I should have been brought to, right? Like that's again a thing that has happened. And that's unfortunate. It shouldn't be up to that individual to have to advocate in the moment for a standard level of respect and care, right?
Absolutely.
And I think an interesting through line in our conversation of like, I think we look back with nostalgia on the streetcar days, but realizing that the streetcar days were really propped up by, the robber baron mentality. And then once that wasn't possible, we went to the car because that's where the money was. And now, the car is kind of morphed into the Uber Lyft system because that's, again, it's making money, and it's focused more on that, increase of capital than on moving the people around, which is what they need.
Yeah. And cars have never been more expensive. Any new car, like oh my gosh, they're just so big. American car manufacturers are not producing affordable cars, just like we're not producing affordable housing. Like, it's,
right.
Every new car is like 2 or 3 times more expensive than 20 years ago. Insurance is 2 or 3 times more expensive than years ago. Gas remains cheap because because of the oil lobby and their immense power over Congress to keep gas very cheap. But we all know that that's artificially cheap.
Right, that's all subsidized. Like again, looking at that is like that is also subsidized. That's a subsidized system.
Subsidized, yes, exactly. And then when it comes to subsidizing public transit, it's like, what? How could we possibly? Why would we do that?
Why would we do that? Yeah.
Why would we do that? Let's only subsidize the harmful, destructive things, and not the libraries or the buses.
Yes, unfortunately. We're not going to tell anybody, you and I, that, like, don't look at libraries. It's fine. We get our budget and we do what we do with it, and everybody's happy.
Yes.
And we can always say that every dollar invested in libraries brings back X number of dollars of economic output. Like, whatever. I just like buying books. So wonderful. As we wrap up, I thought, we've talking a lot about a lot of the challenges that you're approaching in your advocacy. I wanted to kind of end on a more positive note, but hopefully not a toxically positive note. Looking back to 2019 and all the work you've been doing with the Providence Streets Coalition, what are some of your successes that you're really proud of?
Yeah, absolutely. On the transit side, the campaign is in its third year. So winning $15 million the first year in one-time funds, then last year winning $15 million in annual funds.
Yeah.
That felt like a huge win for us. And we're expecting to win more this year to keep this momentum going, and the trajectory of RIPTA's finances on the up and up. But we must restore the service cuts. It's the most important thing. And then on the biking and walking side, there was, a huge growth in the bike infrastructure in Providence right after we were founded. So in 2021, 2022, we really shepherded the implementation of two-way bike trails on Empire Street, right outside of the Providence Public Library, Empire Chestnut, South Water Street, which has been very controversial and is battle still not done. And Broad Street, I am personally the most proud of that one, and I live near there now. You can now pretty much bike safely on almost fully protected infrastructure from Roger Williams Park to Lippett Park. The east side. So all along kind of the eastern side of Providence, from the south side through downtown, through over the pedestrian bridge to the east side, and stopping at India Point Park as well. So I'm really proud of that. And I come to this work through bikes primarily. And so the past 3 years, really having shifted attention from bikes to buses has been wonderful. So interesting, so eye-opening, and I love it. And I love organizing with transit riders. Bikes will always be my home base and my passion. And we have a lot more to do on that front as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you for doing it.
Yeah. And now we have I think a bigger opportunity with change in leadership at RIDOT than we've had the entire time that the Streets Coalition has been in its existence. The leadership of RIDOT has been pretty hostile to these ideas, all of these ideas, every single one of them.
Seeing transportation as cars only, right? I assume.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, as really prioritizing. Every once in a while they'll get excited about building a new train station, but which is fine and fair. But they're not excited about taking snow off of sidewalks or bus stops.
Yes.
Or improving a crosswalk. Also, I would say one of our biggest successes has been our advocacy on North Main Street, which unfortunately was preempted by the deaths of 3 pedestrians in an 18-month period from 2023 to 2024. And catalyzed after 30 years of citizen advocacy, of planning documents, of saying, what are we doing on North Main Street? It's, paralleling or, State Route 1 from Pawtucket to downtown Providence. It's like paralleling 95. Why do we have another little mini 95?
Right.
But where people live, and where there's senior housing, and where there's, this major grocery store and shopping area, where we have all of these different schools and community institutions, and lots of people walking, and lots of people biking, and the R line, lots of people taking the bus. The bus stops and the crosswalks don't line up. There are huge gaps in between them, which is the lighting doesn't work. There's no, you can't see at night. There's just an incredible amount of peril and danger, and that's why people have died. And we tonight is actually a meeting of the North Main Street Task Force, which our current councilwoman, Sue Anderbaugh, has just been so incredible in roping together all of the stakeholders. I bring up RIDOT because one of the most consistent challenges in this work has been dealing with the state-owned roads in our city. RIDOT really has prioritized the fast passage of cars over the safe passage of people at the expense of Providence residents. And nothing is more obvious than trying to walk on North Main Street, on Allens Ave, on Elmwood Avenue, where I live, on Smith Street. Just go to the Knight Memorial Library and chat across the street.
Yes.
That's all you got to do to understand this problem.
Yeah.
So state roads within our city, and I know that Providence is not alone in this. I think, many communities around Rhode Island have the exact same issue of the major, fast, scary roads through their city being state owned.
Yep.
And their own city not having a whole lot of control or power to do anything about it. So that is with a new leadership change at RIDA, we are really optimistic about changing the culture there to be more responsive to safety and to prioritize safety. We have a couple bills in the State House this year that are safety focused. And follow along to learn more.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So to wrap up, we have a segment called The Last Chapter, where I will pose a library or bookish related question. And today I felt this question went along with our conversation a little bit because people moving in space is sort of part of what makes a place a place. And so when you're reading a novel, what are some of your favorite world building details that authors will put in that just make the fiction seem more real to you?
Oh my gosh, I love this question. I love world building. The one that jumps to mind that kind of connects the sci-fi with the transportation conversation is this book by Kim Stanley Robinson called New York 2140.
Yes.
Yes.
That book is so good.
So much fun. Basically envisioning New York City after sea level rise, after a massive amount of sea level rise, and envisioning New York City as the new super Venice.
Yeah.
And having all of the transportation, all of the surface-based transportation be on water.
Yeah.
So all of the public transit, there's no more subway because everything's underwater. And the boat traffic and the different kinds of boats that people own according to class and the whole, that whole water-based mobility ecosystem I was just eating up. I was like, this is so much fun.
that book was so great because it's just wow, they're just like us, right? I think and it's not hard again to write a book now to make the people seem like us right now because it is now, but just that was so believable. I loved it. Oh, great book. Awesome. Well, Liza, thank you so very much for your time. If people want to follow along or learn more about Providence Streets Coalition, I know you mentioned the website earlier. I'll put a link in the show notes. How else can people kind of check in with you all and see what you're up to?
Yeah, please get in touch. We have so many ways for people to get on board and to get involved. Easiest thing is, just go to our website, pvdstreets.org. On our Who page, send me an email, and we'll get you plugged in. We have our social media is at Providence Streets or PVD Streets on pretty much any social media platform that you can imagine. And we are at the State House almost weekly, pretty much weekly from now through the end of session. And we're out in the streets. Tomorrow we'll be shoveling the brand new Woonasquatucket extension path on Kinsley and Promenade out from the snow. Sometimes our stuff is very grassroots, guerrilla. Yeah. Sometimes we're leading family bike rides. Sometimes we're shoveling snow. Sometimes we're talking to legislators. So we kind of do it all.
Doing all the stuff. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Dave.
And thank you everyone for listening. If you would like to respond to our last chapter topic, tell us some of your favorite world building details to find in fiction, or if you want to just reach out to the show, send us an email at overdoingitpod@gmail.com. And as always, that's overdue, like all the library books in my house, INGIT, POD, or find us on Instagram at overdoingitpod. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend and rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to help us reach more Rhode Islanders. Overdoing It is proud to be a resident partner of the Rhode Island Center for the Book and is brought to you by library staff and community members all around the Ocean State. The project has been funded in part by the Rhode Island Office of Library and Information Services. Thank you again for listening. This has been another episode of Overdoing It, the Rhode Island Library Podcast. We're overdoing it, but you're doing just fine. What are some of your successes that you're really proud of and look to as successes? I'll cut that so it doesn't sound so silly.